Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one over the 9-game NBA slate for today on DraftKings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out, really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets I build every single night for the NBA season, I do projections, values, my cheat sheet, my defense versus position chart. The statistics are all presented in a color code, so you know what's good, know what's bad. It's all presented pretty nice and neat. I update it all the way up until lock. I just don't set it like at 5 p.m. and just leave it there and let you guys figure out the rest. I will update it all the way up until lock, and you can also ask me questions in Discord. If you're interested, links in the description below for my Patreon. And without further ado, let's get into today's slate. So I actually have a lot of interest in all like first 7 guys like LUKA, Giannis, Drummond, TRAE, JOKIC, SABONIS, Fox. Now, obviously, you can't play all 6 or 7 of them, but I do want to hit on a couple of quick notes on all these guys because I do think they're all in play, and you guys need to figure out which one you want to play because you're going to want to play one or two of these guys in your lineup. So we'll start off with LUKA. He's the most expensive player on the slate. Yeah, I missed the days when he was like in the 9K range. That was just such an easy play every single night. But you gotta have interest in LUKA. I'm a big LUKA guy. I'm sure most of you are as well because the guy's just awesome to watch and he's an absolute beast. He's averaging 29 points per game, 9.6 rebounds, 8.9 assists, averaging over 58 fantasy points per game. Guy is just insane. Averaging 1.75 points per minute and a 38% usage rate this season, which the 1.75 points per minute is second in the league only behind Giannis, but LUKA typically plays more minutes than Giannis does, so it kind of evens out. And he's nearly averaging a triple-double per game. He's a triple-double threat every time he's on the court. And Kristaps is going to be out, and Tim Hardaway, and if you run the numbers with them off the court, he's averaging 1.94 points per minute, which would be the highest in the NBA if you gave him those numbers, and a 38% usage rate. Extremely good numbers, and this is a solid matchup versus Charlotte. Now, I will say they're more bad versus big men than they are versus guards, but you know LUKA's going to be fine here. And the only problem is he's very expensive, but there's enough value on this slate to get him in if you choose to do so. So LUKA, I think he's got 80 point upside every time he's on the court, so I do have interest in LUKA. You could also look at Giannis at 11,500. This game actually does feature the highest over-under on the slate. He is expensive though, and there's always the case where he doesn't play full minutes, and that's the problem with Giannis. You know, there's always potential that he does not play a full allotment of minutes. Like versus Chicago, they blow him out. Only played 27 minutes. Versus Philly, didn't really get blown out, but only 30 minutes, then 31. That's kind of more typical Giannis, 30, 31 minutes. But there is some games where he'll only play like 26 minutes or 24, 27, and if you're only playing 24 minutes, you're not going to hit your ceiling. Now, he's still good on a point per minute basis in those minutes, but 24 minutes, 44 fantasy points. Not a lot of players can do that. 27 minutes, 56 fantasy points. It's still good, but if he's not going to get a full 30-ish minutes, I mean, he'll play 35 minutes in a competitive game. We saw it versus Orlando. He had 68 fantasy points. I know one game he had over 80 versus Utah where he played 38 minutes. So if the game's competitive, obviously he's going to be a smash play. He's not even the most expensive player on these slates, so I do like that. He's only 11,500, so he's 900 cheaper than LUKA, which is pretty surprising. You'd expect him to at least be like 12K, so I do like the savings you get from LUKA here, and I think Giannis is a fantastic play. Milwaukee plays extremely fast, and he's averaging 1.92 points per minute on the season with the near 40% usage rate, which tops everybody in the league, even LUKA. And like I said, the only problem is a blowout, and they are 11.5 point favorites here, which does get me a little bit concerned, but it is a solid matchup versus San Antonio, not a very good defensive team. So if you want to make Giannis just spend up and save 900 off of LUKA, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But my favorite spend up out of this bunch, I'll tell you right now, it's going to be Andre Drummond here at 9,900 because he does offer us a pretty nice price tag. He's below 5 figures, which I do like. Now, he did struggle last game versus the Clippers. Only played 27 minutes. Game got a little bit out of hand and only had 12 boards, 10 points. It was not a great game. And there is some trade rumors swirling around about him going to Atlanta, but I assume he's going to be on the court tonight and playing. And the main thing here is that Blake Griffin's out, Luke Kennard, and Markieff Morris. They're all out, so it's going to be the Drummond show here. And with all of them off the court, he has a 24% usage rate and 1.4 points per minute. Doesn't really change much from his usual numbers, so I can't really give him too much of a boost, but he's still going to have to take on more of an offensive load. And going up against Golden State, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. We've seen centers have some pretty good games versus Golden State this season, and they just struggle quite a bit with big men, so I do think Drummond can get over the 50-point mark at 9,900, and I think he's a pretty solid play versus Golden State. Should be able to get a lot of boards. 2020 game definitely in the cards. So Andre Drummond, he's my favorite play of this bunch as of right now. Obviously that can change throughout the day, but as of right now, I think Drummond's a fantastic play. Now you could also look at Trae Young and GPPs. He's 9,500. Again, I apologize for talking about all these players, but I'm not going too in depth. I just think they're all solid options, but you guys got to figure out like which one or two you want to pick out. So I'm gonna try to help you guys out here. But Trae Young, don't love him, but John Collins is potentially going to be out, so he should be the entire offense here if that happens to be the case. And if you look at the matchup, it would suggest the matchup sucks versus Indianapolis because, or Indiana, I should say, versus the Pacers. It would suggest that it sucks because Malcolm Brogdon is a pretty good defender, but Malcolm Brogdon's also going to be out. So it's going to be a bump up for Trae in this matchup. And now the problem is the Pacers do play really slow, but Atlanta plays fast, and they have horrible defense, so this game should be played a little bit fast here. And, Trae's below 10K, so it definitely entices me. Without Collins on the court, Trae's got a 35% usage rate, over 1.3 points per minute. He's going to take a ton of shots, we know that, so I think he's very interesting in GPPs. I don't expect him to have a lot of ownership either. Playing at home, I actually don't think he's a solid option. I actually think he is a solid option. I said that wrong. Okay, I'm back. My nose was itching so bad. All right, anyway, we already talked about Trae Young. Solid matchup versus Indy with Malcolm Brogdon being off the court. NIKOLA JOKIC, he gets a smash spot versus Washington. Now, I will say he has cooled off. He was on a hot stretch for a while where he was like at 65, 45, 59, 37, 58, 51. You guys get the idea. He was getting like 50-plus points every single night. Past 3 games have been a little rough. Now, I only saw 26 minutes versus Sacramento, 33 fantasy points. Then he had 32 minutes versus Houston, which would suggest he's probably going to have a good game. Only had 34 fantasy points. Then he had 24 minutes versus Indy, only 29 fantasy points. So he has struggled the past 3 games. But I do think he can bounce back here versus Washington because we get a smash spot here versus the Wizards. Huge pace-up spot. Denver is 20th in pace of play, which is one of the slowest in the league, while Washington is 7th fastest. And we all know Washington sucks on defense, and these games usually tend to get really high totals in Vegas. Now, I don't think the total's out yet. You might be waiting on Bradley Beal news, but I had to imagine it's going to be decently high here, and the Nuggets should have a pretty decently high total. And like I said, they're terrible on defense. They're the second worst defensive team right now for fantasy points given up, and individually for Jokic, they are 28th versus centers. And we just saw Whiteside absolutely demolish them last night for 61 fantasy points. And I actually played Whiteside, and he was below 5%, I think. Or maybe he was like 5.6%. That was nice. Unfortunately, I also played, what's his name? Jason Tatum, which that did not end up working out, surprisingly. So that sucked. But anyway, he's got a 25% usage rate on the season, 1.34 points per minute. I do think he's a very solid play at 9,400. If you want to go double center with Drummond and Jokic, I mean, I have no problems with that whatsoever. They're all good matchups. DOMANTAS SABONIS here. He comes at 8,900. Again, I apologize for talking about all these guys, but I'm going to pick probably 2 of these guys in my lineups, maybe at the very least 1, but because there's a lot of value on the slate. But Sabonis, he finds himself in a really good spot versus Atlanta. And I always have interest in the guy when Brogdon's off the court because he's got a 25% usage rate and nearly 1.3 points per minute when that happens to be the case. And it's a great matchup versus Atlanta, too. They are the worst defensive team in the NBA. They're 29th versus power forwards. They play really fast, so it's a nice pace-up spot as they are 4th in pace of play. I think Sabonis is a pretty solid play. He's going to get 30-plus minutes, and he's going to get you 40-plus points. That's pretty much a guarantee. So if you don't like that for 8,900, I don't know what to tell you. But he's a solid play. Definitely has 50-point upside in this matchup versus Atlanta. And then De'Aaron Fox, he goes up against New Orleans. This is going to be the last guy we talk about in a row. But he's coming off an absolute monster game. I really liked him versus Memphis, and he smashed. He played 30 minutes, 4 boards, 9 assists, 2 blocks, 5 steals. So the 5 steals are a little bit fluky, but still happens, so we got to count it. And he had 59 fantasy points with 27 real-life points. Now, I could see a similar game here versus New Orleans. Memphis was an amazing matchup, but we actually get an even better matchup here versus New Orleans. As point guards just absolutely smash them every single game. They rank dead last, 30th versus point guards, and it's a huge pace-up spot, which I think suits a guy like De'Aaron Fox pretty well. You can get the steals and blocks. I shouldn't say blocks, the steal. He's not really a block guy. But New Orleans is 6th in pace of play, and Sacramento is 27th. So, again, huge pace-up spots. And he's got a 20% usage rate on the season, 1.19 points per minute. Now, the price has come up. He was in that low 7K range, so 8,600. He's not going to grade out as a good point per dollar option, but I still think he's a solid play just because he's a good player. He's going to get 30-plus minutes, elite matchup versus New Orleans. So De'Aaron Fox definitely on my GPP radar. Probably won't play him in cash games because of that price, because he's overpriced a little bit, but definitely a GPP option. And now we can skip a few players. I apologize for talking about all of these guys, but they're all in really good spots, and they're all good players, so they're all on my radar. And I only talk about guys that are on my radar at this moment. Again, my radar can change a little bit throughout the day, but And these guys are in all good spots. So I think I'm sure most of you had questions of whether you should play them or not. I think they're all in play. You just gotta kind of figure out which one's your best point per dollar option and which one fits your lineup best. All right, so we're going to scroll down a little bit. Jayson Tatum, so he burned me big time last night. I actually had some really good lineups, and I had Tatum like as a one-off because I know I'd stacked the entire Washington-Portland game. I had Lillard, which didn't do great, but then I had McCollum, Whiteside, Jordan McCrae, Garrison Matthews, and I think, what's that tall guy on the Wizards, like Andris Passioniskas, something like that. He did okay, he had like 15 points, but had a full game stack. Everyone was doing great. And then I had Tatum as a one-off, and of course he gets 28 fantasy points at 8,200. I mean, that's the only guy that ruined the lineup. But that's how it goes sometimes. I think I had Anthony Davis as well, and he smashed. But I don't know, I had a couple lineups last night. I don't typically play more than one lineup, but I did 3-enter max because I wanted to stack that Washington Portland game, and it actually came in a lot lower owned than I thought it would, which was nice. And unfortunately, Tatum is the one that ruined it, but if Kemba Walker's out, now they are on a back-to-back, so maybe they just sit Kemba out for this game, but because he is dealing with the illness. But as of right now, I have no idea if he's going to play. But if he's out, I still gotta like Tatum. His numbers still suggest he's a good play with Kemba Walker off the court. I know it didn't work out last night in the best matchup possible. Go figure. But still, it's a really good matchup here versus Chicago. And without Kemba Walker on the court, Jayson Tatum's averaging 1.25 points per minute with a 34% usage rate. Strong numbers. He's going to play 35 plus minutes in a competitive game. And Chicago is 30th versus power forwards. So actually, it's an even better matchup than it was last night versus Atlanta. So I think theoretically, he should be a good play. But I mean, he did bust last game, but I'm willing to look past that. Had 13 points, 9 boards, 3 assists. Just was not scoring like he usually does. But the numbers would suggest he's a good play with Kemba Walker off the court. So I will have interest in him if Kemba happens to be out. If Kemba's in, I will pass. Let's see, just going on the list here. D'Lo's out, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Chris Paul. I talked about a lot of guys, so I'm not going to click on his name and go too in-depth, but he's been playing pretty good recently. It's a really good matchup versus Cleveland. They ranked 29th versus point guards so far this season, so can't really ask for much of a better spot for Chris Paul, so he's definitely on my radar, but 7,800, a little pricey, but he has been playing pretty well, over a point per minute kind of guy. Kristaps is going to be out. He's projected to miss the game. Just wanted to double check. See if they updated John Collins' status. Same as yesterday, so nothing new on John Collins, but okay, scrolling down, you could look at Gilgeous-Alexander. It's a really good matchup versus Cleveland. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. I think they're third worst right now for fantasy points given up, and they just really, really suck versus guards. So, like Chris Paul, you could also like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, pretty much the same matchup. Jaylen Brown, he had a really good game last time out, but I personally want to pass at 7,400. Let's see, scrolling down the list a little bit. Buddy Hield, it's a really good matchup versus New Orleans. It's a fast-paced game. I think this game could set up well for him. He's been over a point per minute, and he's actually been playing well. He was really ice cold, where he was like at 23, 28, 18, 19, 26. He has bounced back recently with 34, 44, 35, 42, so I do like the recent form from him. He's going to play 35-plus minutes. It's an elite matchup versus New Orleans, big pace-up spot. They suck on defense, especially versus guards. So Buddy Hield definitely on my GPP radar. Now the price has come up quite a bit. He was at 6,200, 6,200, 6,700. 7,100, we're getting up there a little bit, but I still think he's a good play given the matchup. Gordon Hayward, you could look his way if Kemba happens to be out. What was his price last night? Was it 7K? Yeah, his price didn't even move. So if Kemba's out, yeah, we got to have some interest. Chicago's not that great defensively. Now, they're actually pretty good versus point guards and shooting guards, but they struggle versus small forward and down. So I would have some interest in Gordon Hayward. He had an okay game last night. Had 30 fantasy points, 18 points, 1 assist, 6 boards. More so, he's going to get more in the assist column, hopefully more in the rebound column. So I think Gordon Hayward would be a solid option if Kemba happens to be out. Let's see, scrolling down the list. Damian Lee, I mean, all those mid-range Warriors like really sucked versus the Timberwolves, which makes absolutely no sense at all. But yeah, they sucked. If I wanted to play one, though, I would rather play ALEC BURKS here, who is 6K. So I know he sucked in the last game, and he only had 22 minutes despite getting the start, and he's played huge minutes in the game prior. He had 38 minutes versus San Antonio, went into overtime, so you could say he got like 33 minutes. Still, 22 minutes versus Minnesota, 12 fantasy points. ALEC BURKS is better than that. I think he's gonna get more minutes in this game. He also had 5 personal fouls in the last game as well. But being that it's a little bit of a risky play, I won't say his cash game safe, but you can certainly look his way in GPPs at lower ownership. I think the last game will keep some people off of him. And with D'Lo out, he's going to draw the start. And without him on the court, he has a team high 25% usage rate and over a point per minute. And it's a good matchup too versus Detroit, who is bottom 10 versus guards. So ALEC Burks, I think this could be a nice bounce back spot for him at lower ownership, and the price did come down a little bit. So ALEC Burks definitely on my radar. Just know there's a little bit of risk with him because they could always lose minutes to Kai Bowman off the bench. Let's see. Christian Wood's price is getting up there. Jordan McRae, that guy is just an absolute monster. I played him like 3 or 4 times so far this season, and he has scored 50 points in at least 2 of those. I played him versus Miami. He had 55 fantasy points, and I played him versus Portland. He had 50 fantasy points. The guy is just good off the bench. And if Bradley Beal's out, we got to have interest. And his price actually came down from having 50 fantasy points because, I don't know, that's just DraftKings sometimes. Although I think the pricing came out before probably when the game started, so I can't really yell at them too much. But if Bradley Beal's out, we can play Jordan McRae again despite a tough matchup versus Denver. And without Bradley Beal, Thomas Bryant, and Mobile, and all those guys off the court, he's averaging a 29.7% usage rate and 1.42 points per minute. I know the matchup sucks, but those are elite numbers, and that's too good to ignore. So Jordan McRae definitely on my radar. If Bradley Beal happens to be out, would become an excellent play at 5,700. The upside he possesses is just insane, and he's got a green light, man. He shot 26 times last game. 26. He gets the ball, he's shooting the ball. So gotta have interest in Jordan McRae. He played big minutes. He's played at least 30 minutes in the past 3 games. Played 29 versus New York. So gotta have interest in Jordan McRae. Very solid player off the bench. Scrolling down here a little bit, TJ Warren. If you just want exposure to Indy versus Atlanta, I totally get it. He's got upside. He's got a little bit of a lower floor, but he's got 30+ point upside. Had 34 versus Denver. 30 versus Philly, 26, 26, 47 versus Toronto, then 14 for the lower floor there, although they also got blown out. 33, 27, 14, 28. So I think he's an okay play if you just want exposure versus Atlanta, one of the worst, actually the worst defensive team. I think they're 30th versus small forwards. So it is a good matchup for TJ Warren if you happen to want to use him. Let's see, scrolling down the list. Aaron Holiday, I think he's actually one of the better plays on the entire slate. So he comes in at 5,600, and with Malcolm Brogdon out, that means he's going to get the start and see about 30 so minutes, I should say. And he's been pretty solid recently. 20 points in 22 minutes, 26 points in 31 minutes, 32 points in 33, 34 and 30. Pretty solid. He's been about a point per minute guy, and without him on the court, Malcolm Brogdon, that is, he's got a 24% usage rate, and it's about a point per minute. So it kind of lines up with the numbers I just said. This is an awesome matchup versus Atlanta too. They are 4th in pace of play, so it's a big pace up spot for the Pacers here. And again, the worst defensive team in the NBA, and they're bottom 10 versus guards. Marcus Smart last night just absolutely destroyed them. So Aaron Holiday, I think he's a very solid play at 5,600 despite being pretty expensive. Let's see. So I never remember how to say this guy's name correctly. I think it's Bjelica, something like that. Nemanja Bjelica. I think I'm correct, but the guy's a little hit or miss, I will say. He had 21 points in the last game, 18 points versus the Clippers, 41 versus Denver, 28 versus Phoenix is solid, then 14, 20, 23, 24, 29. But this is a really good matchup here versus New Orleans, and like I said, this is a big pace-up spot for the Kings, so I like getting guys in pace-up spots. And this is a great matchup versus New Orleans. They ranked 23rd versus power forwards. He's been about a point per minute guy this season. 5,500, not a bad price for him. So I do have a little bit of interest in Bjelica. Not a great point per dollar option, but I think he's a solid mid-range guy. If you have 5,500 left, I wouldn't hate the idea of just plugging in Bjelica. Marcus Smart, if Kemba Walker's out, will probably have to come close to locking him in. I did last night, and he just did fantastic. 36 minutes last night versus Atlanta. Had 46 fantasy points, 15 points, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 9 assists, 6 boards. Pretty much did everything. Was flirting with a triple-double there. Just missed the double-double. But with Kemba off the court, he has a 20% usage rate, over a point per minute, and he's still pretty cheap. His price only came up 300. Now, the matchup sucks versus Chicago, which might sound a little weird, but they actually rank number 1 versus point guards and shooting guards. They are very good at the guard position, but they suck down low. I think that's more of a product of teams just attacking them down low, which makes their guards look a little bit better defensively. But still, their numbers would suggest very good versus guards. But still, with Kemba off the court, I think the Celtics will be fine here, especially Marcus Smart. 5,400 is going to be hard for him to pay off. It's going to be hard for him to not pay off his price tag. And I care more about price than I do matchups in DFS. So Marcus Smart would definitely be a solid option despite the tough matchup. And you could also look at TJ McConnell, who I do have interest in. I don't remember his price exactly. I think he's 48. Yeah, 4,800. So I wouldn't play him and Aaron Holiday together because I guess it kind of capture upside a bit. But I don't mind him as a nice GPP pivot off of Aaron Holiday, who's definitely going to be high owned. And I can see TJ McConnell coming in a little bit lower owned here. But with Brogdon off the court, he's averaging 1.06 points per minute, about a 20% usage rate. He's going to get about 25 minutes in this game, so I think he can get 25 to 30 fantasy points. And he's got double upside with the assist and the points. He had 31 points the last game, 25 points versus Denver. Both really tough matchups. Really good matchup here versus Atlanta. It would not surprise me if he got around 30 fantasy points. And if he ends up outscoring Aaron Holiday for about 600, 700 cheaper, you definitely have an edge on the field. So TJ McConnell definitely on my GPP radar. Does great out as a pretty good point per dollar option. And at this point, we have some. I'll go to some of the more value guys that are like in the 3K to low 4K tier. And Murray's going to be out for the Spurs, so that's going to open up some value with the Spurs guards. And we'll start with Derek White. I believe he's 42. Yeah, he's 4,200. Should see about 30 minutes tonight, so we got to have some interest. Because with Murray off the court, White's at 0.84 points per minute, which I know is not great, but he should see like 30 minutes in this game. He saw 26 minutes the past 2 games. I bumped it up to around 30 at 22 points, 26 points. I have a hard time seeing him not get 30 fantasy points in this matchup versus Milwaukee, so I definitely have interest in him. And you could also look at his teammate BRYN Forbes, who comes in at 3,700. And again, he should probably see about 30 minutes in this game. Past 3 games, he's about 30, 31, 29. Might stay the same, but the usage will go up and the point per minute bump as well. Because I think on the season he's at 0.66 points per minute. But if you remove Murray from the court, Forbes is at 0.75 points per minute, which is not great. But again, he's going to see like 30 plus minutes in this matchup. And it's a solid matchup versus Milwaukee. They are second in pace of play, so it's a nice pace up spot. This is the highest over on the slate. Now the Spurs are 11.5 point underdogs here, but still. Highest total on the slate, and they also struggle with guards. They are a pretty good defensive team. They're good versus shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, but they do struggle with point guards and centers, so it's going to line up pretty good for these Spurs point guards that are going to be coming in for Murray, and they're ranked 16th versus position, so I think these San Antonio Spurs guards are definitely our best source of value as of right now. So Forbes and Derek White, all solid options, and then potentially Daniel Tice might be the best value play on these slates. So he comes in at 3,800. And we actually have Enes Kanter listed as questionable with stitches, and then Kemba Walker could potentially be out as well. We had a good game last night versus Atlanta. You saw 24 minutes and 29 fantasy points. And if Kanter happens to miss, I think Daniel Tice is a near lock on this slate because he could push for like 25, 28 minutes in this game. And with them off the court, he's averaging 1.08 points per minute, which he was at 0.96. So it's still solid either way. But if he's out, he's been over a point per minute. And at 3,800, that's just way too cheap for someone that would see 25 plus minutes. And this is an elite matchup versus Chicago, literally the best matchup you can ask for a big man. They rank 30th versus power forwards and 30th versus center. So amazing matchup for Daniel Tice, and he would be a lock for me if Kanter happens to be out. And it also would help if Kemba Walker is out as well. But he's still a pretty good value play even if they're both in. Alright, anyway guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hope it was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. If you are playing NFL DFS today, I have a couple of videos up for that as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video.